how's Timothy's sound?
Okay, Timothy, can you try talking again?
Yes. Hello. I had blueberries for breakfast, and
excellent.
That's not enough, man. That's not enough.
Coconut. No, I had it in coconut yogurt with granola and honey.
Oh, okay. You did like a whole thing. Thank you for doing this, Timothy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm honored. Are we starting?
We're starting. We've been recording. We're in it. It's happening.
Talking about coconut yogurt.
Just wanted to start it off real nice and deep. Are you Timothy to everyone? Does anyone call you Tim or Timmy, or is that a big no?
No, yeah, for sure. People who know me usually generally call me Tim.
Really? Oh, okay.
So you should call me Tim.
I also have like a really strong urge to to be like, hey, TG, like that's what I want to call you.
I'm big time I have like 100 names, like TG, Timmy G,
okay,
Goody.
Okay.
People call me Goody. That's my old nickname from high school.
Oh my God, Goody's great.
T Good, whatever, however you want to remix it. This is the remix edition.
I think I like Goody and TG. These are my favorites.
Okay. All right. Whatever you want, Jennette. It's all yours.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I was so fucking excited last night, like thinking about, oh my God, we're recording this tomorrow, because I feel like basically what I want to do is I want to take that coffee. I wish we had recorded that coffee conversation that we had, and then just could put that out there, because I felt like we just connected in such a way. Probably for like a week after that, I felt kind of like I was buzzing. I felt inspired. I felt like just the way that you were open and things that you were talking about, your childhood, and we were bonding a lot about like upbringing.
Yeah.
I just felt like excited that you exist. So I'm really, really thrilled that you're doing this.
Oh, that is such a nice thing to say. I get all touchy feely about that kind of stuff. I appreciate that. I feel the same way about you. I felt the same buzz from our coffee hangout that day, and also mixed with seeing your show. I think it was like the night or two before that.
Oh yeah, thank you for coming.
And it was so inspiring. It's such a great show, and so obviously just so funny and vulnerable and everything. And it was just like as a creative person, I get so, I just get inspired, like specifically from people who do other kind of genres than me.
Sure.
And that kind of stuff, and just seeing all your talent was just so cool in such a raw way, in such a personal story. I get off. I love like trauma stories and stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think we did a lot of like trauma bonding when we hung out. It was like, let's just delve into that trauma. Let's get in there and just kind of figure it out. And
usually I have to be honest, like I get worried about trauma bonding sometimes when you get to know someone, but with the way we did it, it didn't feel like it was forced or something. It was just like a natural, beautiful conversation.
That's so interesting, though. Say more. Why do you feel nervous about it? What is it?
I think that it can be a crutch for people, especially in a romantic way. Sometimes people like you start to because I feel sometimes people kind of try to look for it. They're
yes.
Like, all right, and then it just becomes artificial to me in some way. Something doesn't feel right about it, and then I get worried that it becomes a crutch.
Oh my God!
In a relationship.
No, it's like you're kind of looking for the savior, and you're kind of like eking out your trauma because you think that will get them to love you, type of thing.
Yeah. Oh God, that's huge. I mean, that's like a codependency too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's weird because it's like, that's why I have a therapist,
100%. No, I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because I feel like there's this thing where, so actually, you know my show, you saw it, but where I was like trying to figure out the dial on trauma and blending the trauma with the humor, because no part of me wants to be the person who's saying this sad thing for pity. Like pity is the fucking last thing I want. If somebody pities me, please, there's the door, leave. But like, I think that it can be, if you're sharing your trauma from the lens of like, this is a thing that happened and now I'm on the other side of it, to me, that's like the fair, appropriate way to share it. But there's this thing in some areas where you can feel a person latching more onto the trauma than the point of than the reason why you're sharing the trauma. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Like, I did this, like, I wrote this like 9-part breakup series back in, I don't even know when it was. It feels like these COVID times feel like,
right.
I think it was like 3 or 4 months ago or something. It was like a 9-part, and like, I just put, it's like kind of like vignette poems, and they kind of like, each one was kind of like, it was like, like going through like the stages of a breakup or whatever, from like, from shock to reconstruction to hope, and so, but it was interesting, like getting so many responses from so many people and talking to so many kind of people about what they were going through. And sometimes it just feels, I don't know, like I can't be like, I'm making this thing, I'm putting it out there for the world, to take in any way. And it's about my specific experience. And the reason I do it is because, I get so much joy from creating something that's so personal and being able to put it out and share, because I know it is a shared experience, of course. Like I get a lot of joy from that, and someone saying like, oh, me too, or I've gone through that as well. But then there is a line where you feel like someone expects something from you because of it, and then sometimes people like, it's like in that idea in therapy about transference, like people put a lot onto you
right
because of this, like when we did that project of mine, 40 Days of Dating, years ago, and it went viral, like people were like putting all these things about their dating lives and their love lives onto us, onto me and my friend. And like, it becomes a lot. It's heavy,
Yeah.
And I can't imagine like for someone like you, like with such a big audience, on how much people can put onto you at times about this, because you are so open about a lot of these things, Well,
I want to know more about when you say expectations. What do you think people are expecting of you? Is it do they want some sort of, do they think they know you better? What is it exactly?
I think, and you tell me how you feel, but I think when an audience starts to think that they know you through your art, because you are so personal about, your stories and your experiences, suddenly a lot of people do think they kind of know you in a way, but they can't know you, of course, like you're only, it's still, even if you're raw about it, you're still curated. Like we're always going to be curating how we put out content to the world, even if it seems like it's so real and so personal, and they can't know you on a daily basis. And I think that then they think they know you, and they put a lot of expectations about who you are and what you can, and all of that. And I don't know. And a lot of people want answers sometimes. And it's like, I have no answers. Like, that's why sometimes I'm making this shit to try to like I'm trying to like process what I'm going through.
Right. And yes.
Somehow making it there, that's a part of the process for me, and trying to discover who I am in the face of all this shit. So I don't know. But it also like brings up, like, do you ever feel like a responsibility about some of the things that you talk about in your work? Like, say your show, for instance, like, do you feel any sense of responsibility, because these are such heavy topics, whether it's eating disorders or trauma, like abuse from childhood abuse, all these things? Like,
for me, I definitely felt more responsibility around, I would say, eating disorders than anything else, because everything else in my story to me felt very, very specific. And I know a lot of people are going to have a different point of view on their mom's death, like, for example, right?
Sure,
so for that one, I'm like, well, okay, I have a really specific point of view about this, so I don't feel any responsibility to sharing anybody else's story. With eating disorders, that was a thing where I tried to make that as personal as I could as well, because I feel like I have a point of view on that is very triggering to a lot of people with eating disorders. Like, I'm sure there are people who would see the show and be like, oh, this is how you're talking about eating disorders. I need to leave. And that's fine. That's their right. Yeah. But I'm not going to.
Does that happen? Does that happen a lot?
Somebody left before, and I found out from the person at the door that she did have an eating disorder, and she found it very triggering.
Sure.
And I think, great. I'm glad that she took care of herself, but also I'm not going to change my point of view. I'm not going to water down my point of view, because it can be intense for the sake of somebody else. I think they need to be responsible for their health, and I need to be responsible for my
that makes
art.
sense.
How annoying is that?
Do you feel like, that's really interesting.
What about you? Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have anything quite like that. A lot of times, like, if I talk about, I think the thing I like to hold responsibility for or accountability for is being, if I talk about a lot of like depression I've gone through, or the abandonment issues that I have, or the attachment issues I kind of have that I've been working on for years. And if I talk about that through my art, or say I just talk about it in general, like maybe on Instagram or something, I do feel a sense of just responsibility in the grand scheme of things about like me, just understanding that I'm a straight man talking about certain kinds of things that a lot of straight men don't talk about.
Right.
And also like, you know, being very vulnerable and open about these kind of things and my feelings. I think that it's just important for me to kind of like have context of that, and knowing that like, oh, maybe like, because I have a lot of guys who write me, they'll say like, thanks, you know, like you've made me think about going back to therapy or go to therapy, or I've had a lot of women write me about like, oh, my boyfriend or my husband, I sent him your post about this or that. And he, you know, he's thinking about going to therapy, or he went to therapy because of this. You've been inspired. Like, so I think that like, I don't know if it's a responsibility, but it's important for me to have meaning about what I do, whether it's meaning for myself or meaning for others, and what I talk about, what I put out in the world now.
And what if those things are at a crossroads, meaning for yourself and meaning for others? Like, does one win?
Does one win what? What do you mean?
Like, if let's say if there's something that you're making, you're like, oh, it could have this meaning for myself, but then maybe it won't have much meaning for other people. I can't even think of a fair example.
Yeah. That's
Do you know what I mean? Is it more self-serving?
I think that all art that we create in the beginning has to be somewhat self-serving. I think that through the process of making it, you have to then figure out how to distribute it to an audience, right? And then you think about how that kind of, you know, how that penetrates an audience, and how, you know, you might finesse this or finesse that because it becomes more palatable, or, you know, like these kind of things like make it. So I think that whether you're doing that consciously or unconsciously, I think that's always going to be a part of the process in some way, you know. And because I'm a big believer that like you should be raw about and honest about what you're making. Yeah. But I also like to like, okay, now how in a way do you make it so the most whatever ears can hear it, the most eyes can see it, the most, you know, people can react with it or whatever. So
interesting. So is that something that you have to navigate often, with like moving the dial so that something becomes more universal? Or do you think that now it just kind of comes out of you naturally?
I think it comes out naturally, but I think that you probably agree, right? Like some things are meant to be the little niche thing, and that's fine. And then some things are meant to be on some other level, you know, like your show, right? Your show is just meant to be made for kind of a small audience, at least in the beginning, right?
Right.
And so I don't know how that can then grow and evolve, becomes a different conversation, I think. But to me, it's like there's a difference between you take like all day, I'd rather be Radiohead than Kiss or whatever, like, or name some massive band. Like, I'd rather be like the more artful, like they're still popular or whatever, but I want to really make the music I want to make, you know?
Sure.
And I don't want to have to like, you know, make something because, oh, this could be like some crazy single that like more people will hear. But I still think about who's listening to it and how it works, you know? So.
Of course. What about because you've worked with I was on your website all day yesterday, like a creep, but you've worked with everybody who's ever lit. Like your clients have been Samsung and Tiffany and Company and Starbucks and Uniqlo, and like just times 1,000. You've worked with everyone. These are all huge, huge businesses. So did working with them, with companies of this stature, did that change your art at all, or these companies came to you and then your art changed, or was your art what it is and then they came to you? What came first?
Well, you know, it's funny, like maybe you've heard this before, you being in the business, but I remember when I was like graduating design and art school. And I remember early on, I was my first year after college, I was a book jacket designer at Simon & Schuster. Oh. And I remember my old boss, John, he said to me, he's like they say in the movies, you do one for them and you do one for yourself. And that is so lame. It's so corny. But that shit, I still think about that when so in a way, a lot of times, some of these kind of more commercial jobs I do are one for them.
Okay.
And that allows me and gives me freedom, whether it's financial freedom, whether it's, just getting a bigger audience because of it. It gives me freedom or just mental freedom for myself to then make the kind of stuff I want to make and make personal projects that I want to make, or do my writing things, or have art shows, or just fucking graffiti on the side of a building, or whatever it is, and so it's that balance for me personally that has always worked. And sometimes in the middle, sometimes they can overlap, where a big brand wants the kind of thing that just wants specifically you to do the thing. When I did my Uniqlo collection, for instance, that was this kind of like overlap where they took all kinds of existing writing I had already done. And they were like, this could be great, like globally. Like, so we put that on t-shirts and stuff. So sometimes there is this beautiful overlap. And then sometimes, of course, if you're doing something for Starbucks, it's like, well, okay, I don't know. It is what it is. And you have to decide as an artist, as a creative person, whether you want to do that now. But also I did a lot more of that kind of stuff early in my career that I'm a little bit more picky about now.
Interesting.
And I think we all, like, don't you think kind of you're like that too? Like, probably
the one for you, one for them approach, I would say, like, it was 20 years for them. And then I was like, okay, enough for them. It's time for mama to like take the reins. That was kind of my, so now I feel like I've swung the opposite direction, and I'm like, it's all for me. And I'm quite selfish.
That's amazing.
But I feel like it's really important because, you have known what your calling has been, it seems like, for so long. And you've been so dedicated to one specific thing, and to the point that you're at the top of your field. For me, it was like my mom put me in a thing that I didn't even want to do. And then I kind of had to realize, I don't really want to do this. So let me try this other thing. And I'm kind of starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So you mentioned how you Instagram about or you have Instagrammed in the past about kind of some struggles with depression. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed I really respect a lot of those posts that I've seen in the past. And it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you're posting about depression in almost real time. Like, this is not something that you're saying in hindsight that you necessarily experienced years beforehand. It seems like it's a more real time, like you talk about it in real time. Is that fair to say, or do you disagree?
No, I've done both. I've done them in hindsight and I've done them in real time for sure. And certainly when it's happening in real time, like I remember I posted something a couple months ago. I was saying that my therapist, told me I should consider taking anti-anxiety medicine. And I just felt so relieved about it. I started crying because like I had never taken anti-anxiety medicine before, but it's like, so in a lot of ways, it's not hard for me to admit that I need help. But, and I don't feel like for that specific thing, like I don't feel ashamed about taking medication, but you just hear such a mixed bag of negative and positive things. And so I just wanted to talk to my audience about like, what are your experiences with this, And it was amazing because then 500 people write me what they, and and obviously it can be a bit overwhelming because everyone's got a different experience for that. And there's a difference between benzos and SSRIs, of course, and everyone, but it was like, so sometimes when I'm going through shit, like it's therapeutic for me to kind of like talk about it out loud, because I think that being able to do that takes away the power in a lot of ways. Like you're still going through it, of course, and you still have to go through that process. But I'm not a good person with secrets. So sometimes when I'm able to just scream it out to the whole world, no matter what I'm going through, I don't know. It gives me a lot of solace,
Are you an extrovert?
Yeah, I would say for sure.
Yeah.
You're kind of an introvert, right? Deep inside?
Yeah. I think, because I imagine the reason why I've been so fascinated with how you talk about your feelings in real time is because I can't imagine doing that. That seems so, like, it just is so puzzling to me. I feel like I have to have, honestly, months of perspective on a thing, if not years, before I feel like I'm ready to talk about it. Otherwise, I just feel like I don't know where I stand. I think it feels very confusing to me, but I find it very admirable and courageous to be able to talk about things in real time. Cause that's like a different level. I'd feel like I'm just stumbling over myself. Like
that's part of it. You're going to stumble. I think you're going to stumble even when you're doing that. And
I don't want to stumble. Goody. What am I calling you?
There you go. Wait, what is your, do you have any nicknames?
My brothers, my family calls me. So, okay, my name is Jennette. Obviously, it's J-E, but it's spelled Jennette instead of, it's like spelled Jennette instead of Jeanette, because my mom didn't want my nickname to be Jean. And then all my brothers wound up calling me Nettie.
Nutty.
Or Net. So that's like what my family calls me.
J-Mac at all?
A lot of people call me J-Mac. McCurdy, I get a lot. And then Jen was like a 2-year phase of my life where everybody who knows me from that phase still calls me Jen. And anyone who didn't know me from that phase, when they hear me called Jen, is in shock.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I'm a Jen.
I think that's my favorite.
Yeah. I feel like a J-Mac. Jen feels a little... I feel like I should be carrying a smart water at all times if I'm Jen, and like in yoga, just perpetually in yoga pants, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
I'm Jen.
But I think that like there is a worry about doing it live time, because then you don't want to come off like Kanye West, where you're just like spouting out whatever at all times, whatever you're going through, and then you just like you digging yourself a deeper hole. But
oh my God,
I don't know. I'm not like, but I've always thought like, do you know Donald Glover, Childish Gambino?
Yes, yeah.
So on his first album, at the end of, I think it's the last song in the first album. The first album is kind of like subpar, but the last song, he does this kind of like voiceover over a beat, and he's just talking about this experience, right? And when he was like a teenager with this girl on the bus or whatever. And he talks about at the end, like whatever, she kind of embarrassed him about something he said about her. He thought like they were like destiny or something, or they're only like 13 years old, and like the whole bus found out or whatever. And and then he says like, at the end, he says something about how like what he learned about that experience. And it wasn't about like, oh, I need to hate girls, or love is fake or something. But he was like, I learned to like make it all for everybody always. So like everybody can't turn around and tell everybody else, because I already told them. And so like, I don't know. So I've always thought about that in terms of my work and the things I make. It's just like, I want to be the owner of my own narrative, you know?
Yeah.
And to own my pain. And like, to me, that's such a beautiful choice. And I don't know. So that's kind of how I always think about it. Now, I'm not saying maybe it's not healthy all the time, and maybe it can make things convoluted and confusing. So that's the part I'm still working on. But
I guess that's why I respond to yours more, because there's plenty of people who do, you know, who talk about their feelings, but to me, a lot of them seem like they're just oversharing. It's like, okay, can we put the brakes on it? But with you, it seems it's just kind of a different tone. How objectively do you think where's the line between sharing and oversharing, between you know?
Yeah.
Do you consider those posts that you do where you're talking, where you're being vulnerable with your depression? Is that art? Is that what is that? How do you define it? How do you define it?
Yeah, I don't know if it can be defined. You know, I think that's something that I still struggle with in a lot of ways. Is that also like, does it perpetuate, you know, your own situation? Does it, you know, and that's always a kind of a scary thing to think about, because I don't want to find myself in a loop where I'm also like subconsciously knowing that, well, I can turn this pain into art or something.
Right.
And
yes.
That's not, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not healthy. And all of that kind of stuff is, I think, really important to constantly consider and to evaluate. So.
No, I think about that with why does Bill Burr comes to mind? Where like, if Bill Burr worked on his anger issues and was no longer angry, would he still be Bill Burr?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's a good question. Yeah.
And it's like, where do you draw the line on like, oh, I should work on this, but then like, yeah, but this kind of serves the old stand-up special, so I'm going to keep this part of, you know? And then at what point is it like, well, then you're just a gross caricature of a person and you're not even living, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, like I don't want to become a lampoon of myself in that sense, you know? And like, it gets weird. Like I think about that with certain kinds of like music artists I listen to, you know? I don't know, like like I'm a big Fiona Apple fan. Like there's so much pain about love and everything, but it's been happening for 20 years. And I'm like, okay, like I don't know. Like, at what point do you? I don't know. Like what does a happy album sound like from someone? You know, Taylor Swift or something. Like maybe they're worried they become irrelevant or something, or they can't make the kind of work that penetrates people in some way.
Totally.
So yeah,
it's and I feel like too, it's dangerous once you become successful or even famous for a certain thing, because I feel like fame is kind of like the way that it works. It kind of feeds people like as if they're like wind-up dolls and they've got 3 catchphrases or something, and they just kind of have to spew one of these 3 things, or maybe even just one thing. And then if they stop spewing that one thing, people are like, oh, they've changed. It's like, well, yeah, because people change, and of course they have to change, but then they don't know if that new thing that they become is going to be validated. So then they keep wedging themselves into a past version of themselves, and they stunt their growth. It's a disaster.
Yeah, it is a disaster. But you know, and on a different, smaller level, but similarly relevant level, that's happening now because of Instagram and Instagram culture and Instagram influencers. So anyone who you might dub as an Instagram influencer or whatever. I mean, there's people who think that I'm an Instagram influencer. I mean, I don't even have that many followers compared to like, you know, so many people.
Sure.
But like anyone who like whatever does brand partnerships and like, you know, talks about their opinions or something or whatever, or showcases them their lives, becomes an influencer in some way nowadays, where it's a little bit like, okay, maybe I am, but like I'm really an artist, or I'm really a designer at heart. Like I'm about my craft. But you see people now, like anybody who gets any sort of a following these days, in any industry, I think that they become like almost prisoner to their own, like whatever people expect from them, right? So it's like, if you're a fashion influencer, okay, now you have whatever, maybe you have 300,000 followers, and like everybody, all these people follow you for what they think they want. But the minute you start talking about something else, so you have to make a decision then as your own entity, like, what the hell am I doing here? Am I good?
Yes.
Because that becomes its own worst kind of hell to me. Like, I don't want to be, because of my followers, want something
enslaved. So, my God.
Yeah. But then people become like, you know, they're like, you know, because of Instagram and stuff, people make a lot of money from brand partnerships and stuff. So then they find themselves in this weird spot where it's like, okay, well, I don't want to, I don't want to make this kind of thing anymore. But I also know that like a lot of my livelihood's dependent on this or whatever. And then they find themselves. So I've been like wary of that since day one. So I'm like, I am not an Instagram artist. I am not, you know what I mean? Like I make art, I make work for the world. I do murals. I do personal projects. I do, you know, I do packet, whatever, you know? So like, cause I want to be able to talk about, if I want to talk about politics today or how much I hate Trump or, you know, my own depression, I don't want to be bound by what people think they need out of me. So
100%. I oh my God, I so relate. There was this time, like, you know, because I used to act and everything, every photo shoot I ever did, it would be like, you know, sexy poses. And I don't even know what that means, but I'd be like, you know, just like posing a certain way, like 7 people posing me before we get the right shot and 8 people doing my hair and makeup. And it's like this whole like thing that just is so far removed from who I feel like I am. Like that is not, there's some people who are great at modeling and photo shoots. I was like good at acting and should never have been in front of a still camera ever in my life. Like it was bad news. But they, you know, they would get some good shots or whatever, and then I'd post these things, and they'd get you know 500, 600,000 likes. And then when I got to the point where I was like, I'm not going to act anymore. I'm going to switch entire careers, quit that thing, and start from scratch. It's like, oh well, now I can't, like, sorry to be vulgar, but I can't post my tits anymore. So I'm going to get you know hundreds of thousands of less likes, but for saying things that actually matter to me. And it caused me, because I feel like it's so easy to just undermine influencing and social media and the pressures of it and make it just like out to be this catty thing that only shallow people who have one brain cell pay attention to. I think it plagues everybody who has a fucking account you're dealing with this shit. And I would have panic attacks because I'd just be thinking like, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? I feel like I'm throwing away this whole past, but I know that that's not true to me. So how do I navigate? It's just like,
how long ago was that for you? That was 3 years ago or something?
About 3 years ago. It was a big, you can see it in the timeline, except I deleted it on my own post. I guess you can't anymore.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's amazing. And then you started making all those tremendous videos. I think that's how I really started. I was like, oh, I love this woman. I love this girl. Like, what? Like, we need to be friends. Like, those videos were like the best. You kind of stopped making them though, right?
Well, I stopped making them because I actually started then feeling, like I didn't want to do a caricature of myself with them.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
You know what I want to touch back on was we were talking about like romanticizing flaws in art and, how to navigate that. Do you feel, so I feel like a lot of your work is about sort of like emotional unavailability or romantic regrets. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Is this something, do you feel fear that if you didn't have those qualities, like the Bill Burr thing, if Bill Burr wasn't angry, would he be Bill Burr? If you didn't have those, would you be you? Is that a real fear? Do you not feel that at all? Like how, you know what I'm saying?
No, I don't have a fear of that at all because like, for instance, like, I know I wrote the like 9-part Instagram breakup, like on Instagram, the breakup series, but I also had a 9-part series 6 months before that about us falling in love. So that's kind of why I did the breakup. So I'm not worried about that at all. I actually think that over the years, I've stopped writing so much about like the heartbreak and more about like, it just like whatever I'm going through, whether it's good or bad times, I write about. So I don't really feel bound by, making sure to stay heartbroken, to keep writing, to keep getting content at all. But so much of the stuff like, that project 40 Days of Dating and stuff like that, and that became like the book we did with that, like so much of all that stuff. Yeah, it did come out of like, and then all the like Instagram stuff like came out of like, being, working with my own relationship issues. And, but what I discovered through all of that was, real things from my past, my childhood that I had to work on. And that's why I'm going through so many things. Relationships become like a manifestation of all those kind of things in a lot of ways.
Oh my God. Yeah. What are you down to go into childhood stuff?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
What kind of stuff was, what was first coming up for you when you were realizing that it was all kind of tied back into childhood?
Yeah. So like, for instance, like about 3 years ago, I went through, so it had been like a long time that I've been in a relationship for, and I was just, not really, I was committed to just my work and just not being serious with anyone. And then I dated someone for about 2.5 years, and it'd been a long time since I had like let someone in my life like that and been vulnerable. And it was beautiful. It was an amazing experience. And I think when we broke up, I had to kind of confront myself in a lot of ways because the same feeling came up that I've been feeling since I was a kid. And so I went through like a deep kind of depression for many months after that. And I went back to therapists. I've been seeing the same therapist like on and off for like 12 years. He's like my Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. Like he is like my
I love
fucking, yeah, he is like my man. And he's like this older, wiser, like guy who's just like, he's almost become like an old, like uncle to me now, like an old wise uncle. And so through that process, like we really, I really discovered something I never truly admitted to myself or even realized was that like, I've had kind of this lightweight depression since I was like a boy, and the same feelings that I feel, which is he dubs as like abandonment depression. So, which is like a form of an attachment disorder, and so like growing up I grew up without my biological father, and I had a really shitty kind of stepdad growing up who was verbally and physically abusive. And through that process, and then I had another stepdad. And then, so I was always kind of yearning for like this kind of male counter, like this love from someone like a father that I never got. And so it would just make sense that when someone leaves me, or even if I leave them, I go through this really dark time where I kind of like, because I had so much emotional, I mean, as all relationships, we put a lot into them, of course, emotionally. But it hits me in a different way. It's almost like an old athletic injury, you know, like that maybe you had when you were a kid, and then when you're older, like you hit your knee the wrong way on a table, or the weather is a little shitty and it starts acting up in a way.
Right.
It's the same way mentally for me when it comes to breakups, that I don't like. It's not this. It hits me in such a more profound way that kind of flattens me in a big way. It's like this whole big empty hole in my chest, and so many questions come up, like did this person really love me? Am I lovable? Why am I not lovable? Did this, and that's so much of what happened as a kid. Like, why is my father not here? Why is this other man not giving me love that I deserve or want? Like, so that hits you in such a profound way as a kid. And my therapist called me out in the last 6 months, something I never really, he's like, you gaslight your brain. You truly because I'll end a relationship, and then I start to change. I basically rewrite the script after the movie's been made. Like, I start to villainize, to myself, villainize this person for whatever reason to make a new narrative, so I can it helps me get over them or something. And it's not healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I said a lot, but
yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing. When did the first stepdad come into your life? How old were you?
I was about 4 or something.
A little baby.
Yeah, a little baby. And then they got divorced when I was 12 or 13.
And so at what point was art always a thing for you? Like, was it something that helped you cope? What are your earliest memories of turning to art, or was this something that happened for you later?
No, it's interesting. I definitely was a creative kid, and I drew a lot. And thank God for my grandparents, because they have this beautiful 60-year relationship, and I was very close to them. So they were this beacon of hope that gave me a certain kind of stability emotionally when it comes to relationships. And I love my mom. My mom's the best, but I just think that my mom had me really young. She was 20, 21, and had a lot of her own plate that she went through. So we've kind of hashed that out over the years, and had really good conversations, especially in the last 2 years, about a lot of that. But when it comes to art, no, I drew a lot as a kid. I was creative, but I quickly turned to just kind of becoming your regular old, kid in the neighborhood playing baseball, basketball, football, and all of that. But my grandparents, so my grandma was an artist, and my grandfather worked at an advertising firm. So they were very creative. So growing up, they would take me. They loved the movies, and they loved theater, and they loved museums and orchestra, and so they would take me to all these places. And I think that basically when I graduated high school, I was a horrible high school student. I barely graduated. All I did was smoke weed and get in trouble. And so for the first couple of years, I was kind of I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was painting homes. This is in Cleveland, Ohio, where I'm from. Painting homes and trying to find my way. And we were working in these beautiful houses. And I had this great boss who, he really kind of took me under his wing and taught me everything he knew. And so I thought, oh, maybe I would become. So then I started taking some classes at a community college during that process. And I thought maybe I was going to get into interior design, because we worked in all these big, beautiful homes in Cleveland. And I started learning different kind of techniques about wallpaper hanging. And I thought, oh, maybe I would. So I started taking some classes, and then I took a drawing classes, a prereq. And this is all community college. And I just had some really encouraging teachers that brought out so much in me, and really encouraged me to keep. They're you have something, and for me, since day one, it's always just been a form of expression. So whether it's drawing or writing or making a social experiment, I just need to, however it comes out, but it's really about the need to say something in this world.
Right. And you have this quote on your website where you got to make a lot of stuff before you can make stuff like yourself, I think is the
Yeah.
When do you feel like you started making stuff that was like yourself? Was there always kind of like an inkling of it, or was there a certain turning point? And if so, when was that you felt like, oh, this is me?
Yeah. I mean, don't you think we all kind of have an inkling early on in some way, or you did one thing that felt that tasted a little different, but you didn't know why? I don't know.
I feel like I had an inkling for like a certain type of thing that I wanted to do, and then I think that I veered away from that for a little bit, and then came back.
Yeah, exactly. Because you veer away for many reasons. Maybe you don't have the whereabouts to understand it because you're too young, or you don't have enough experience, or whatever it is, or someone's, obviously like whatever industry is like pushing you to do the thing that they want you to do. And so I think it's always, and like anything, it just takes time. It's like, like I have a lot of design students who'll ask me like, oh, what internship should I take at this or that? I'm just like, take anything. Like the best thing about internships or early jobs or whatever is like understanding what you don't want to do. And I think that's so much a part of it. We have to go through that process of life of like, and our crafts to like really get to a place to understand like, oh, now I'm making something that's really me, and you imitate it. And I think that's fine. There's a lot of imitation of like, early on, you take all your influences and you put them in a bowl and mix them up. And then finally, I think at some point you start to make your own kind of thing, your own kind of inspiration through that all. So I think it's just that process.
Right. So okay. So how did you get from this, community college with these great teachers and really feeling like you're onto something, you're starting to find your way. How did you, there's a million steps between that and where you are now, right? What were some of like the big kind of milestones for you? How did those happen?
But isn't it interesting? Like, and this is something I've realized in the last couple of years, like really going through there, and like you start to like, okay, you start to put all the things you connect all the dots, right? And then you start to think, oh fuck, like I actually like the reason I even like left Cleveland and moved to New York. Like, so I moved to New York to go to SVA, School of Visual Arts, so the art design school here, right? And it was so much money, and I had no money. Like I grew up like we didn't have any fucking money. I didn't know how I was gonna pay for this. And I worked day and night in Cleveland to like figure out how I was going to get the hell out of there, go to New York City and get scholarships and all these things. And then you start to realize like, wow, I really was doing it as a reaction to X, Y, and Z. Like I thought, like you, and yeah, you were on your own journey and you wanted to like, but also like I was on this like ego thing when I think about it. And like, I was like, I didn't want to be like, I wanted to prove people back home who thought I was a loser that I was going to become something, or I wanted to be everything, that my mom isn't, like, or my family isn't.
Yeah.
Like all that shit, and you're like, you start to really like, it really starts to become crystal clear for you. Like years later, you're like, wow, holy shit. Like I was just really like, just on one. I was just like doing these things. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah. But then it's scary because then you're like, well, but if the ego wasn't driving me to do that thing, would I have ever done anything? Would I have just been eating potato chips?
Yeah. And I don't think it's bad. I just think it's interesting when you become really honest with yourself about these things like years later.
Yes. Yeah.
And then then it kind of like, then you have to be willing to confront those questions, like, okay, then if that's why I'm here now, and like, do I like my life? Do I like the work I do? Do I find meaning in it? Is it fulfilling me or not? And if it's not, why? And how? And all those things. And like, who the fuck am I in the face of all this shit? Like, what am I? Like, I don't know, like
just the light usual questions.
Just the light stuff, yeah.
What do you feel like? It is so. Dare we get into this? It's such a big one. But now that you're at the top, do you feel as fulfilled as when you were climbing the ladder, or
Sure.
has it tipped off? Are you more fulfilled?
What does that the top mean though? Like you're never gonna be right. Like there's always another level.
Well, do you not? What do you feel like is the top? Do you not feel like you're at the top?
The top of what? Like the top? No.
I mean, look, I'm looking at Starbucks, Samsung, Tiffany Company. Seems like the top.
I mean, those things are like, I don't know. I don't think that's about, I mean, those I don't know. That's like commercial work and stuff. Like, I don't know. I think being at the top really means making work you really want to do, and also being, and getting some recognition for it is beautiful. And like,
Sure.
but also like being at the top is about sustainability and like how much you're willing to play the game too, and like, that's a tricky thing.
What does that mean? Play the game? What do you mean?
Well, like play the game, like willing to like continue to, I guess you have to confront how much you want to stay relevant in whatever industry you're in, and what relevance means to you, and how you, and whether or not you're playing for yourself or you're playing for other people, And I think those are all like deep, like big questions to constantly kind of think about.
Do you feel like there's a time in your life when you've played more for other people?
Yeah, and I think that's why you see some of those big names, because like early on I was doing a lot of that kind of like more commercial work.
Interesting. So now you're more particular with like not with doing less of that and doing more of your own kind of passion projects, would you say, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, for sure. I think there is a part of that. Yeah, like I'm not like, so like, I think, especially early on for me, like you get some recognition, you start getting some money, so you start making real money, you start, getting, I've traveled the whole world for my job. I've been everywhere from China to Australia to Dubai to whatever. Like, wow. It's, and then you're like, okay, but what am I just saying yes to say yes now? Like after a while, like you really start to like what is the point of all this? Like, why am I happy? Like, and so yeah, I think I'm more sensitive about the way I approach these things now, because I really want to take care of myself first and not just say yes to everything, So
do you hate when I bring up your commercial work? Should I not have done that?
No, I don't care at all. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Like,
okay.
I mean, so much of it is great. Like my Uniqlo collection and all that stuff. I stand by it proudly, and I've done, I mean, that stuff has given me so many opportunities. Like, no way. I'm privileged and honored to do all of it, So, I mean, like, for instance, like, but here's what I mean. Like, because I did a lot of stuff early on when I was getting, in my industry, when I was getting a lot of opportunities, I did like huge murals for like Target in Tribeca here in New York, or I would do big things. I did, weren't you part of Awesomeness TV one?
Yeah.
I thought, yeah. Like I did a mural there. Like I did a lot of cool stuff, and then, but that has afforded me the privilege to be able to do so much more now, because like, for instance, I just finished a huge basketball court here in Brooklyn for a school and a community that really needs this for a foundation that refurbishes old courts, and like underprivileged communities and stuff. And so I'm trying to really think about, and I do a lot more kind of like on street kind of graffiti work with messages that I really want to write, and I'm looking to partner with more people that align with so many of my values now and interests in the world, especially around like social work and politics and privileges and things like that. And so because I've been able to do so much of that stuff in the past, it's afforded me, more opportunities to do things I want to do now. So
yeah. Well, I first came onto your work a while back with the thing that we've both referenced a couple of times, but the 40 Days of Dating project.
Yeah.
Somebody told me I should check it out, and I loved it. I mean, I was obsessed. I thought it was the greatest, most interesting. I had never seen an art project like that. Can you kind of describe what it is for people who might not know?
Yeah. So let's see, the elevator pitch of 40 Days of Dating.
Yeah, go for it.
It's kind of like 40 Days of Dating was like, my good friend Jessica and I were friends for many years. We were both single at the time. We had never dated. It had only been platonic, but I think there was interest, of course. And she and I had very opposite stereotypical relationship habits for men and women. Like she was this person who was like, kind of a serial monogamous, falling for the guy right away. He goes on 2 good dates and is like ready to get married and shit. And I, at the time, was the complete opposite. Like I was kind of like I was non-committal, just wanting to have fun, dating numerous people at once, kind of being an asshole in a lot of ways. And I call myself a recovering misogynist now, like I think if most like straight men in America took a hard look at themselves, they would call themselves that too, especially anybody who's trying to really be more self-realized. I think it's so ingrained in who we are as a culture, but yeah, so we decided that we were going to quote unquote date each other for 40 days. And we were going to document it as an experiment. And in order for it to be a true experiment, we created a set of 6 rules that we had to obey within the 40 days. So they were things like we had to see each other every day. We had to go to, we saw couples therapists together weekly. We couldn't have sex or hook up or date anyone else. There were no rules that she and I had to, but we just couldn't do it. We couldn't see anyone else.
Yeah.
Things like that. We had to go on a weekend trip together. And then we had to fill out one of the biggest rules that we had to fill out this form every day at the end of every night. So it was there were these 8 questions and that's what became the basis for the whole. So if you go to the website and you go to day 1 or day 2 or day 3, it's the same thing on each day. Jessica's on the left, I'm on the right, and it's the same 8 questions. And you get to see how 2 people experience the same date, the same day differently, and it's really interesting that way because it's the same questions. Did you see Jessica today? What'd you guys do? How do you feel about things? Do you want to do anything differently tomorrow? Blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, so then you can you follow along. And of course there's tons of art that that goes with the writing, videos that we shot, a lot of things that kind of really become this full 3-dimensional art project. And we also, the way we released it, so we did it first. We didn't release it live, although when we were releasing it, a lot of people thought it was live. But
interesting. Yeah.
Even though there's dates on every day or whatever, but we did it in the spring, and then we took all our content and made the website, and then we released it daily. So it really became this full internet reality thing. It was kind of, and so we did it daily for 40 days or whatever, so that people would follow along. Yeah, and it was crazy because we released it, and I just thought, maybe my mom and an ex-girlfriend will read this shit, and then it just kept taking off more and more. And by day 12 or 13, we started getting interviewed by I think it was I don't know, New York Post at first, and then it just kept, and suddenly it was just CNN, NBC Today Show, and it was on BBC News. It was on. It was the View. My mom's friends were "Your son's on the View." Jenny McCarthy. And then I also did another social experiment, which is where we with 2 friends, I documented. We went to eat. There's text therapy is a very popular trendy thing these days.
Yes, yeah. I've seen you post about this.
And so we basically 3 friends, we were all going through a kind of a difficult time at the time. And we basically started seeing a text therapist for 6 weeks, and we documented our sessions. So if you go to the site, you can kind of see, well, we kind of edited to the short, our top 5 sessions or whatever, the most interesting. And you can kind of
oh, I love this.
What you can kind of read our interactions with the therapist on. What is it? I'm going to. It's called Friends with Secrets.
Friends with Secrets.
Friendswithsecrets.com. The other one's 12 Kinds of Kindness and 40 Days of Dating.
For the secrets,
yeah.
were you not, was the idea that you're not telling your friends the thing? What was the tie-in with the friendship?
It was just kind of a nod to just the fact that we each talked about a lot of personal things during that time. And so it was just this thing of we're just, friends with secrets. I don't know. There was no secrets between us. We all knew, the 3 of us, but anyone who was reading it would be oh, okay. And that during that time was when I was really going through a lot. I was actually going through a lot of depression and a really hard time with a lot of anxiety and going through. And that actually propelled me to get back with I hadn't seen my regular therapist in a couple of years. And that process got me back to him. And I've been seeing him regularly since, over the last 2 years, 2.5 years.
And now you feel like you're on the other side of kind of whatever that was. Wow.
Yeah.
And you attribute a lot of that to therapy.
Yeah, I contribute a lot to therapy. I think it's different for everybody. Do you see a therapist regularly? You do, right?
Not now, but I definitely did. I was seeing a therapist, quite several times a week. Yeah.
And you stopped?
Yeah. I haven't been in.
How does life feel different without it? 6 months? Do you feel?
Yeah. That's such a good question. I feel like I actually keep a little notes folder on my phone of like things that I potentially could maybe book a session about, but it'd be like very specific and targeted. Whereas before I felt like, oh my God, there's so much that I have to work on, that I need to resolve, that I need to process. If this is not a several times a week thing, like I'm going to implode or explode. I don't know which one's worse, but something's going to happen. It's going to be ugly. But then I just started realizing that I had less to talk about in sessions. And I realized, eating disorders were no longer an issue for me. Felt like I'd worked through, for the most part, as much as I could, the childhood trauma stuff. And little by little, I was, relationship issues. I was like, oh, I'm kind of at like a solid place where I don't feel like I have anything to tell her. Like, I don't know what I would tell her. But now I do keep a notes folder, and there's probably, I probably got a couple sessions worth lined up.
You solved it. You're
I'm
like
done.
cured.
I'm good. I'm perfect.
Wait,
ready to go?
You're in a new relationship, right?
Well, not new, but yeah, he's great.
It's been on and off. Are we not allowed to talk about it?
No. We can talk about it. Well, it's weird. No, it's weird because I'm typically very private. Like I don't post anything. Okay. I feel like I learned this the hard way, but like relationships in the past, if I would post like one thing about the person I was with, it would give me a lot of anxiety because people get very involved. They would feel like, they felt like they had a right to kind of say why or why not this person would work. And then I felt like it's weird to have people either more often than rooting for, but like trying to get rid of a relationship, just like having that much kind of negative energy towards something it skeeves me out a little bit. So I didn't post anything about the relationship at all, and was like very private about it. And then just in the podcast, because I'm having such long conversations, it's like gonna come up,
Yeah, of course.
So now I'm I guess I gotta be open about it.
Yeah. No, I hear you. You have to be protective of it. You have to keep it sacred, I think, right? Like,
that's exactly, sacred is, oh my God, that's the exact word. I just think, hopefully good, healthy relationships are beautiful and sacred and wonderful. And there's part of me that just like doesn't want to talk about it. I don't know.
No, of course. That makes so much sense. I mean, you have you have so many people who want to know about your life in that way too. So you have to be extra sensitive to it, and like you've learned your lesson in the past. So I think that sounds like a very healthy boundary, Jennette. I respect it. I'm not going to ask any more questions.
Wait, how do you feel though about like
coffee? The next coffee, I will. Next time we
okay, that's good. You can ask questions.
I didn't really have anything big to say. I was just prying a little bit.
Do you feel, how do you feel about like posting about relationships?
Well, I learned my lesson. I think, my last girlfriend, I was in Paris last summer for 3 months, and I was like on this, like, I don't know. I was like, you know what? I just need to go to Paris and learn French, and I need a break. And which was, such a blessing to be able to do that. But I prepared for a couple months for it, and I went. And it was this profound experience in my life. It was incredible to just like wake up in Paris every day and like go to buy a baguette and whatever. And I fell in love. And like I fell in love with this woman, and we had this beautiful summer. And I posted a lot about her, like on my Instagram stories. And then I ended up writing like a 9-part series about how we fell in love. I wrote it while we were together, and I posted them, and people were so involved and like rooting for us and like all of that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of fun. It was beautiful. But then, we ended up breaking up. We only dated for like, whatever, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. It was a very kind of like intense whirlwind. But then like the whole thing of like, because I moved back to New York and it just didn't work out long distance. And so when then I decided to write this like 9-part breakup series, which was about it, and anyone who followed the first series knew who it was about.
Mm-hmm.
It was, it was a little like, I don't know. I just felt like I was even at odds about posting it, the breakup series. I was a little like, I don't know, because I knew people were going to know. And there becomes this thing, like, I never want to get to a point where I'm like, I never mention obviously names or anything and anything I write about, but there is, I think it's the same for, I would imagine how someone writing an album, especially like a famous person, we're talking about another famous, like where is the line, like if people are invested and then they know who it's about, like, you don't want to like obviously be like publicly destroying someone else's character,
Sure,
but also like you need to make your art the way you need to make it. So there's this like weird dance you have to do. I say all that to say that like I kind of through that process, I don't want to say I learned my lesson because I think that every relationship is different and you do, but I did kind of like realize like I want to be a little bit more sacred about the next one, and like I don't want to just, because I don't know, I was also in a different place. I was just like in Paris and not working and just like living this dream, and like
that's what I wanted to ask about. Yeah
and like so I was just posting everything and I was just like, oh, this is my girl, I love her, like whatever, like I don't know, like I was just shocked because I do think in this weird way, like if you can't, like love is trash if you can't shout it out to the world, like I'm a big like I don't know, like so I get like, but at the same time, I'm more protective now and sacred about my, romantic relationships going forward. And I don't want, especially if it's too early, like I don't want to, because, people share all their opinions with you unsolicited and all these things. And I think I don't want that to, and also then if you break up or whatever, like it becomes this whole thing. And then people are just, they're invested in your personal life in that way that I want to really be more protective of going forward. So I don't think I'll do the same thing anymore.
Do you feel like part of falling in love with her was because of being in Paris? Like, do you think there is something to that, being in a new place and just like being open and living this romantic life do you think that contributed, or do you think it was, or do you think there was something, like looking back on it, right? Or do you think that there was something really substantial and deeper there beyond the romance of the...
I think in a way, both, I think definitely the fact that I was just living this dream in Paris and American boy falling in love with Parisian woman,
right.
I did it. I did that. Like I just, like I went there, I tried to learn French and eat and yeah, like we, walking the streets and the damn Parisian streets at 4 a.m, making out and drinking all night and whatever, like just, it was a little bit of a dream, and I think that because that's where I was in my life at the time, it played into that, of course, and like, I wasn't working as much. Like I was like, I ain't taking 3 months. So like, I've been working nonstop for 10, 12 years. Like I want to take a break, and like, so that's what it was about. So I don't know. Yeah. It's interesting. Like had that not been the case and I met her under different circumstances, would it have been, maybe it still would have happened, but it wouldn't have felt so intense and romantic and dreamlike because that's where I was at that state. But was it real or was it really as, I don't know. That's still something I don't know. I think that it ended for a lot of reasons, and I don't think we probably weren't compatible for a lot of reasons because of that were maybe I turned a blind eye to because I was just kind of in Paris, like living that life, so.
Yeah, I had a relationship with somebody that I met in a different country, and I felt like realistically it should have ended kind of as soon as I was going back home. Like that's when it ended, But they kept going for a couple years. I will never forget. It was such a. I actually just watched the movie Before Sunrise. Have you seen that movie?
Oh God, yeah. It's Before Sunrise. Did you see all 3?
No, I just saw the first one.
Oh. Jennette, you need to, as soon as we get off this podcast, You need to watch, what's the second one? Before sunrise. That's the one you need. That's the one. The second one is better than the first one.
That's what I've heard. Okay. That's what I've heard.
You need the first one.
But so I watched the first one, and that at the end when they're like saying goodbye to each other when she's getting on the train, that feeling, I mean, that gave me a punch to my gut because I know that feeling and I can access that feeling any time. It haunts me, and I felt it once in my life. And it was this feeling of, it was like my body knew this relationship is done, but my heart was trying to stay in it, but my body knew. And it was like every part of me just felt like this ghostly, like uncomfortable, I'm getting in the taxi and going away from him. And it was just like this fucking, oh my God. It's so powerful.
I love it. Yeah, I know that feeling too. I know that feeling. I can access it so fast.
That thing. It's wild,
and
right?
Then, like we dated, for another 4 months, like long distance or something. And then we met in Rome, Italy on New Year's, for New Year's, like a couple days before New Year's.
It was teed up.
And we broke up on New Year's Eve. I mean, the whole thing was like a movie. Like
you got there and then you guys broke up?
I flew to Italy and literally we broke up within like 24, 36 hours.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
Oh,
and then
dear God.
She's like, I gotta leave. Like, I can't be here. And she leaves literally, and I can't get a flight home because it's gonna be like whatever, $10,000. Like I could. So I stay in Rome for the next 3 or 4 days, walking alone, going to tourist site, like going to the Colosseum, eating, like crying alone over like amazing pasta, like it's cold, like the whole thing felt like a movie. I was just like, what, are you fucking kidding me?
Wow.
Yeah,
was it the sort of thing where as soon as you saw each other in Italy, where you kind of knew, it just felt different? You knew immediately?
Yeah, it felt different. And I don't want to put all the, like, I felt different too, but I sense a lot more on her. And I think that's what happened. I think after like the first, I was like super jet lagged, of course, the first day. So it was a little like, I don't know. And then like we kind of woke up the next day and like we did all kinds of things. And I was like, by midday, I was like, what's going on? Like, I feel something. Like, I feel there's a distance here,
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been feeling that for myself as well. Like the long distance wasn't working, but the thing that we didn't like what happened in Rome. We broke up, but we didn't really like fight for each other. No one fought for each other. And then that was the kind of thing like afterwards that kind of like weighed on me. It's like, why didn't I don't know. I guess I didn't fight because I knew it wasn't right, even though like there's always a part of me that kind of was like, why didn't I fight? I should have fought a little bit,
right.
Just to see, because we kind of like just talked about it all and had this like really big, mature conversation about what would work, what doesn't. It was so early in a relationship to be like, oh, I'm going to move somewhere, but
totally. Oh
but then in true Timothy Goodman's fashion,
T-Goods.
Like T-Goods. Like a month and a half later, I tried to get her back and like confess my love and like I'll move to Paris and do the whole thing.
You did? Did it work? No, it didn't work.
No, actually, did I tell you I'm in Paris right now? That's what we're talking. No, it didn't work. It did not work. But I don't regret that. I don't know. You ever just feel like you got to fight for something just to do it? Like you just fucking got to fight. Like, I don't know. Like, I just wanted to like lay shit on, like down and just put it all out there.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had to lay it all out on the line to see where she was, or were you laying it all out on the line because you genuinely felt that? You know what I mean? Like, were you testing her, or was it just like, my heart is here. I felt like
my heart was there, but I don't know if my heart was there for the right reasons,
My Italy was the Silver Lake motorboats, and that was when the boy had come to visit me, and we'd like planned a little day of activities, and we were in the motorboats, and it was like just the most beautiful day in this dinky boat that like the fucking motor's not working. It's like, and he's like trying to get it with his foot, and then he's like, it just doesn't feel the same. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm crying in this motorboat, and it's just like we're surrounded by like ducks and happy people.
And that was it? That was the day?
No, then it continued for 1.5 years.
Oh my.
But that's the thing is like, I actually respect that because he was the one who called out that it felt different. And I think I was so hurt by him saying that it felt different that I couldn't accept that I knew it was different too. And I felt like the hurt was what motivated me to like keep it running. And God.
Do you feel like sorry, go ahead.
No, I just beat a dead horse, but keep going.
But do you feel like, do you sometimes not want to end a relationship because you feel like you're just a failure then? Like you got to try, you got to make it happen, like can't, or something like that. Like you beat yourself up about it? For
sure. And then it's also scary. I think I really don't like, I don't like dating. I don't like, flirting and niceties. Like that's not fun.
Niceties.
And like pretend and like, that whole thing, the whole dance of it just feels so contrived. And it's like, well, this is not going to be what it is. So can we just fast forward to what it's going to be so we know if that works? Because these first 6 months are technically a waste. So let's just cut to month 7 and then we can figure out whether this is going to work, right? Like, come on.
Yeah. See, my problem is that I'm great in this first 6 months. I'm amazing. And then I'm like, I don't know how to make it work.
What happens? What shifts?
I'm working on it. I try. I don't know, different things for everyone, of course, but like, I think sometimes like, you're not really into astrology, right?
No.
Yeah. So I had this astrologist tell me like, because my Venus is in Gemini. So your Venus is like what rules your love and sex life in a lot of ways. And my Venus is like in Gemini, which means that like you can actually get into a relationship just out of curiosity. like sometimes I just like, I get and you can get bored very fast, and same with work. So I think that's why I like to do a lot of different things. It also like is part of your like creative, like life and that kind of thing. And this astrologist was telling me how like, she was like, you literally get in relationships just out of curiosity, right? And I was like, oh shit. Yeah, like sometimes that's true. I just like people, I like really love like getting to know people.
But you don't love knowing them.
No, I love knowing them. I have friendships for years and years, but dating is different, I mean, I've been in long-term relationships, of course, but I think sometimes, I don't know. Like I like to, sometimes I can like put a blind eye to like who the person really is or whether or not they're really compatible with me.
Oh my God. Same. Same.
So
yeah, totally.
Then you like 2 years into it, you're eating dinner. You're like, wait, what? Like this person doesn't like share any similar things that are meaningful interests that I have or something. I don't know. So.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
Look, I want to be mindful of your time. You've been so generous with it so far. And thank you for agreeing to do this.
No, of course. No, thank you for asking me. I was so pumped. I love talking to you so much. So this is easy,
This has been great.
I'm honored to be on this.
Oh man, thanks.